let's do some of the odd problems on your homework. Let's start with number 1 because that's the first odd positive number. Okay, for each of these says state the vertex, coordinates, the focus, the equation for the directrix, and the focal width. You don't have to graph it. The graph is there just in case you need it. I might use the graph just as a reference, but I won't use it very much. Here we go, number 1. Y equals negative 1/6 x squared. And the first thing I'm thinking of about this one is going to be the vertex. So let's come over here and let's go ahead and write down what the vertex is. This one is fairly obvious. It's at 0, 0. For what it matters, we also need to figure out the direction that it's pointing. This thing is opening up. Okay, here's the thing. The y comes first. Because the y comes first, it's a normal parabola function like we've been used to dealing with. And I just accidentally lied to you. There we go. You noticed it too, didn't you? It's negative, so it opens down. Okay. At this point, I will graph it just to get kind of a visual for what it looks like. And when we graph that, we know it's at 0, 0. We know it opens down. And so the graph is going to tell me a few things. It's going to tell me where the focus goes and where the directrix goes. Let me get a different color pen here. I'm going to grab the screen one. And now I don't know exactly where this is, but I know the focus is down here somewhere and the directrix is up there somewhere. That was crooked. Let me straighten that up a little bit. But basically, this distance here from vertex to from vertex to focus is the same distance there. So we need to figure out what that distance is, and you know that formula. Let's grab yet one more color, and we will do that. So 1/6, actually let's go ahead and put it in the bars, is equal to 1/4 times c, and c is that focal length. Sometimes it's called a, sometimes it's called c. I'm going to call it c. We'll make that positive. The absolute value makes it positive, so we have 1/6 equals 1/4c. And we can cross multiply, but let's be realistic. 1/6 equals 1/4c, so therefore 6 equals 4c. When we divide by 4, we have 6/4, and we keep being realistic about it. We know what 6/4 is. It's 1.5. Here's what that tells me. That tells me that this distance right here from the vertex, which is at 0, 0, to that point is 1.5. Now, if that distance is 1.5, that definitely tells me the coordinate. The coordinate of the focus is at 0, negative 1.5. And also, since this distance is the same, both of them are c units from the vertex, this line right here, this horizontal line, crosses the y-axis at 1.5, positive 1.5. So the equation of this line is y equals 1.5. So if you wanted to, you could come up here and you can write all that stuff down. And I'm going to, just so I can actually list the stuff the way the directions ask to list it. So the focus is at the coordinate 0, negative 1.5. The directrix is not a point. I misspelled it. The directrix is not a point. The directrix is a line, and you have to give the equation of a line. Don't say 1.5. 1.5 is a number. I need an equation. The equation is y equals 1.5. Horizontal line. Okay, one more thing we need, and that is the focal width. And here's what the focal width is, in case you forgot. One more color, just because I have a ton of assorted colors here. The focal width is going to be this distance across here. Like if you were building a solar cooker or a satellite dish or something, you would need to know what that distance is. And so in order to find it, there's all kinds of fantastic ways of doing it, but it's essentially this. This is beautiful. Take the absolute value of that and flip it over. It's the reciprocal of that. There's a long list of reasons for it. For the sake of time in this video, I'm not going to go through it right now. Nevertheless, that is the shortcut. I believe the real long cut has been explained in class by this point, so I'm going to leave it up to that for you to have the full understanding of why that is the case. But here it goes, one more time. The focal width. Focal width. Not to be confused with the focal length. Length is the distance from here to here. Now you can turn your parabola all kinds of ways, but the focal length is c, which we found. Focal length. I should probably put it in my list with my other things. But my focal width is going to be the absolute value of this flipped over. There's a notation for flipping it over. It's an exponent to the -1, same as the inverse. But that exponent to the -1 actually does flip it over. So when we do that, we have 1/6. We don't need the bars anymore on that. And so 1/6, man, I'm making a mess, aren't I? To the -1 is 6. Okay, here's probably what you're thinking. First of all, where'd that -1 exponent come from? You didn't show us that in class. No, again, I didn't. But if you have an exponent of -1, it flips it over. Just real quick, don't write this down. But if you have 62 to the -1, you really have 1 over 62. It's the same thing. If I have 1/62 all to the -1, then I end up with positive 62. It flips the whole thing over. And so that's what that -1 does. Keeping that in mind, that's going to help us find our focal width. So here's probably what you're thinking. Can't I just use that denominator? No. Yes and no. If that numerator is a 1, then flipping it over just gives you that denominator. That's fine. But what if you had 5/6 here? You can't just take the 6. It would actually be 6/5. It's going to be the reciprocal of that, and it's always going to be positive. So we found the focal width, the focal length. We found everything they asked us to find, did we? Yeah, we did. We did. They didn't ask us to find the focal length, but that's okay because we needed it for that stuff. So there's number 1. We're going to hit number 3 next because we're hitting the odd ones. Pause this if you need to. Okay, this one's trickier because the vertex is not at the origin, so it makes it a little bit harder to deal with, but that is okay. So here goes number 3. Y equals 4x plus 3 squared minus 1. Okay, first of all, here's the most basic thing you should notice. It's a parabola. Duh. You got that. You know it's a parabola. Well, now let's figure out what direction our parabola is opening, where that vertex is, that sort of thing. And if we can get a visual for that, then we can start finding other coordinates where we need to find them. Again, don't have to graph it, but I'm going to just to get a visual. It's not going to be very detailed. Where's the vertex? Let's come up here and write the vertex down. Vertex is at -3, -1. -3, -1. For what it matters, it opens up. Because it's a Y, so it opens up or down. It's positive, so it opens up. So we know that much. So when we graph this thing, let's see, when we graph it, we're going to come over here and we're going to go to -3, -1, and we're going to graph a parabola that opens up. Now, how steep do I make it? That's up to you. You know, I'm not going to be too picky about that sort of thing. Mine is probably not the correct steepness. I'll go ahead and tell you, actually, mine is definitely not the correct steepness. But it's the general shape that we need. Okay? Let's start finding some other stuff. Here's the thing. This 4 is not the fraction we're used to seeing, but that's okay. So the absolute value of 4, which is 4, is equal to 1 over 4c. So what do we do with that? Well, first of all, again, that's just 4. Makes it positive. It keeps it positive in this case. And we have 1 over 4c, and we cross multiply. So 16c equals 1. So c is 1/16. Oh, wow. What is that? Well, 1/16 as a decimal is 0.0625. You may want to check behind me on that. I don't have my calculator on me at the moment. It's in another room. I'm not going to pause the video to go get it. But I'm pretty sure it's 0.0625. If you want to use a fraction, that's cool. I'm going to go with a decimal now. I'm going to start using a decimal. And I do believe it's 0.0625. So, yeah, let's do that. It is. It definitely is. Okay. So that is our focal length. What in the world does that tell me? Here's what that tells me. That tells me, and this is where you got to be really detailed with your drawing, that tells me that the focus is, put some pins down, I can talk here. That tells me that the focus is 1/16 of a unit up from the vertex, and it tells me the directrix is 1/16 of a unit down from the vertex. So therefore, I'm going to take my green pen and I'm going to put a dot where the focus goes. Well, where is that dot? In a minute we'll figure out what that is, but it's super duper close to that vertex. So it's really hard to draw on the graphs that you have, but it just at least gives you a visual. And then we're going to put that down. This is not drawn to scale. So where is that green dot? Where is that green line? Well, let me tell you this. That green dot is 1 unit higher than that vertex right there. If it's 1 unit higher, then here's what happens. Here's what happens in your head. it's -3, -1, but wait, it's not -1, it's -1 plus 1/16. You can use a fraction, you can use a decimal. That is completely up to you. I said I was going to use a decimal, and then I realized that it's going to be easier actually if I use a fraction. So let's do that. So, what is my focus? My focus is at the coordinate -3, -1, but not really. It's up one higher. So it's still horizontally at -3, but it's -1. This is scratch work. This is what's happening in my head right now. This is at -1 plus that decimal, or that fraction. -1 plus 1/16 is -15/16. So -15/16. That's almost -1. It's 1/16 away from being -1. Okay? So we'll erase that, make a big mess. It's smeared everywhere, but that's okay. And now where's that directrix? Well, that directrix is 1/16 down from that. And again, a directrix is an equation. So my directrix is the equation horizontal, so I know it crosses the y-axis. See, and you can see that from your picture. That directrix is down 1 and then a little more. Well, how much more? That much more. Decimal, fraction, whichever one, I don't care. I'm going to use a decimal. Fraction, sorry, I'm going to use a fraction. Not that it matters. But I'm going to use a fraction, and the fraction I'm going to use is -1 and 1/17. 1/16. I'm sorry, my tongue's getting tied. That was confusing, so I'll say it again. I'm going to go down 1 and then a 16th more. So I've gone down 1 and 1/16. That's 17/16. Okay? So what is my focal width? Focal width is this little guy right here. If I was to draw horizontally from the focus, how wide would that be? Well, how wide would that be? Let's figure it out. Focal width. I told you it's always positive that and the reciprocal of that. So it's this flipped over. Absolute value of 4 is still 4. Flip that over and you get 1/4. So the focal width is 1/4. There we go. There's number 1 and number 3. Okay, here's number 5. It has a vertex at the origin. Let's just go ahead and draw it. We know that it has a vertex there, and it opens up, so we can draw it. It doesn't have to be perfect or shaped exactly the right way. It's just pointing in the right direction, so we know that much. And the focus and the vertex are 3 units apart. And you know where the focus is based on the way this whole thing is shaped. You know your focus is in here somewhere. We'll just put a dot there. And what we do know is that this distance right here is 3. That's supposed to be a bracket. It doesn't look like it, but it's a 3. So that distance from here to here is 3, which tells me this also. If I have a directrix down here, which I do, this distance, that's a better bracket, is 3 as well. So in case you really need to know, and you do, this line is the line y equals -3. This point right here is the point 0, 3, and obviously that's at 0, 0. So let's just go ahead and start writing some of this stuff down. Y equals something, I don't know what yet, x squared. Okay, this is the equation of a parabola with a vertex at the origin. So we're good there. We have like the understood +0 and the +0, and yeah, I think y'all got that. But the number in the front, I don't know what it is, and that's the problem. And so therefore, I'm going to have to use this 3. Well, since I know that the distance is 3, the focal length is 3, and I also know that the number in the front here, the A value, is equal to 1/4C, then this is a really easy part. 1/4 times 3, that's 1/12. Okay, now the question is this a positive or a negative? And because of the absolute value that's implied in this particular problem, in this particular formula right here, I have to make that determination based on the graph. Because it's opening upward, it's positive. So therefore, that is the answer. Okay, I'm going to skip several of them. I'm going to not do all of these for you, but we are going to hit number 9, and that'll give you an indication of the types of problems that are on here. So it has a vertex at 2, -2, and a directrix of y equals 1. Yeah, let's do this one. Let's do it. Okay, you may want to draw it. You don't have to, but it does give you a really good picture of what it looks like. So the directrix is at y equals 1. I'll draw that in red for no reason at all. So there it is. There's your directrix. And your vertex is at 2, -2, so we'll draw that. That's it. That's at 1. So we'll go a couple in every direction. And then we'll put our vertex down. I'll put my vertex in green just because. 2, -2, so 2, -2. There it is. So question. How does this parabola open? Does it open up? Does it open down? Does it open left? Or does it open right? Well, knowing that it never ever touches the directrix, it has to open down. So there's your parabola. That is the ugliest parabola I've ever drawn in my life. It's not even a parabola. But I do know this much. Even though I've drawn an ugly parabola, I know this distance right here. And it's easy to count. On some of them, it's not as easy to count. You have to use a little bit of intuition. But in this situation, that's very easy. We know how far that is. That's 3. Well, for what it matters, and it does, the focus is 3 units from the vertex as well. So my focus is right there. My axis got crooked. Isn't that weird? Straighten it up or make it bolder or something. There we go. So there's my focus, my focal point. And it's out of whack too. Man, this whole picture's messed up. But the whole point of it is that distance is 3. And that tells me this. It tells me right there, C equals 3. Fantastic. So before I even write anything else down equation-wise, like we did here, let's start tinkering with this. And it's the same work. It's going to look exactly the same. And I know you're thinking, well, Mr. Reader, it's just 1/12. Yeah, sure, great. But let's write it just because. The A value is the absolute value of 1/4C. 1/4C is 4 times 3, and there we go. It's 1/12. And that's great. Yeah, fantastic. But what's the sign? It's negative. It's negative. I'm going to put a negative all throughout. And the reason I'm going to do that is because it's opening downward. Okay, so let's come back up here and let's start writing an equation. So y equals x. Okay, if my vertex is at 2, -2, then that means that it's the opposite of that one, and I keep that one. And I know what my A value is, A being the number in the front, so -1/12. Okay? I said I wouldn't do any other ones, and I'm not lying to you, but let me give you a push in the right direction on a couple of them, maybe even just one of them. It has a focus at, now I'll do a little bit of 8 and 10. Has a focus at 1, 1 and a directrix there. It does not tell you the vertex. But halfway in between your focus and directrix is your vertex. So draw that. Find out where your vertex is based on that. It's going to be halfway in between those two right there. Also, I give you the vertex and I give you the directrix. Don't panic. You know what 65/8 is. Now, you may not know what it is off the top of your head, but you do know that 8 goes into 65 8 times with 1 left over. So think about this intuitively. My vertex is at 6, 8, and this is at 8 and 1/8. So this is 1/8 away from that. So when you're drawing this graph, it's going to be really, really, really close. They're going to be very close. So if you want to kind of draw it big or just sort of exaggerate it, that's fine. But keep in mind that if that's at 8 and that's at 8 and 1/8, because that's what you get when you divide it, then they're 1/8 apart. There you go.